Manchester, England. April 1945. 90 to 47 hours. Lot Schneider stands at the gate of Camp 107. Hands trembling as a British Women's Auxiliary Corps officer checks her name against a clipboard. Through the wire, she can see a motor coach idling on the gravel. Drive. Civilian, not military. No bars on the windows. No armed escort in sight. The officer looks up and smiles. Ready. Then, Miss Schneider? Manchester's. Lovely this time of year. The museum. Should be quiet on a Wednesday. Lot. Swallows hard. 6 months ago, she had been a Luftwaffe signals operator, intercepting Allied communications in a bunker outside Brimman. 3 months ago, she had surrendered to British forces, expecting summary execution or worse. Yesterday she had signed a form in German and English agreeing to a supervised city visit with 11 other women. Prisoners. No shackles mentioned, no chains specified, just a polite request to return by 1700 hours. She assumed it was a clerical error. Miss Schneider. The officer extended a small cloth purse. Your allowance, 10 shillings for the day. Tea. Museum entry. Perhaps a small souvenir if you're careful with it. Lot. Took the purse. The coins inside were real British sterling, clinking softly against each other. She thought this had to be a test. She stepped through the gate. Anyway, for 18 months, Luda had been told what awaited captured German women. In British hands, forced labor in munitions factories, systematic abuse, starvation in stone cells, treatment designed to break body and spirit. Die Engländer kennen kein Gnade, the propaganda had said. The English knew no mercy. The warnings had been explicit, unambiguous, repeated until they became truth. She had believed every word because she had no reason not to. Everyone believed it. They had surrendered anyway. Not out of hope, but out of the mathematical certainty that anything was better than the Soviet advance from the east or the burning collapse of the Reich. What they expected was cruelty masked as British civility. What they found was something they had no framework to comprehend. They found dignity. 3 weeks earlier, Camp 107, Cheshire, morning. Inspection in a barracks that was heated, clean, and equipped with individual cots. Not bunks, not straw pallets, but actual beds with mattresses and wool blankets. Captain Vera Atkins, Women's Auxiliary. Mid-30s, fluent in German, and the kind of steady gaze that missed nothing, walked the line with a clipboard. She stopped in front of L. You were signals? Yes, before capture, L nods. Yes, ma'am. Your English is excellent. Where did you learn? School, ma'am. And my mother was half English before the war. Atkins makes a note. We're organizing supervised city visits for prisoners with good conduct records, cultural enrichment, civilian interaction, opportunity to see Britain beyond barbed wire. Interested? Lot blinks. Visits where, ma'am? Manchester. Museums, shops, tea rooms. Escorted, obviously. But no restraints. You'll sign an agreement to return by evening. Then You're free to move about the designated areas. Free? The word sounded like a foreign language. Why? Luda asked before she could stop herself. Atkins did not frown. Because you're not animals, Miss Schneider. You're prisoners of war who will eventually return to Germany. We'd prefer you come back with accurate information about British society rather than whatever nonsense Gables told you. That night, Ellen her cot, not a shared bunk, not a stone floor, turned the offer over in her mind like a coin she didn't trust. A city visit. Unshackled. Impossible. Real. She signed the form the next morning. British policy toward female POWs was codified in a series of War Office directives issued between 1940 and 1944, refined through experience and grounded in a combination of Geneva Convention compliance and strategic calculation. Separate facilities, female prisoners held in dedicated camps with women guards and medical staff. No mixed-gender housing, strict protocols for male guard interaction, cultural access. Prisoners were permitted supervised visits to museums, libraries, concerts, and historical sites. The objective: demonstrate British civilization while gathering intelligence through observation and conversation. Progressive trust. New arrivals were confined to camp. Good behavior earned privileges, letter writing, recreational activities, educational classes, excellent conduct earned city visits, reciprocity. British women were held in German camps. Every humane gesture toward German prisoners was documented, photographed, reported to the Red Cross as leverage for better treatment of British captives. By April 1945, over 2,400 German women, nurses, auxiliaries, communication specialists, administrative personnel were held in British camps. Fewer than 40 had attempted escape. Mortality from mistreatment was zero. This wasn't sentimentality. It was policy enforced by bureaucracy and the cold calculation that well-treated prisoners become post-war ambassadors. Elle didn't know any of this when she boarded the coach that Wednesday morning. She just knew no one had chained her wrists. The motor coach winds through Cheshire countryside that looks nothing like the bombed-out ruins Lau expected. Green fields, stone villages, sheep grazing peacefully. No craters, no military checkpoints, no signs of the total war that's devastated Europe. Beside her, Greta Zimmermann, former Wehrmacht clerk captured in Holland, presses her face to the window. It's untouched. How is it untouched? The channel murmurs, Frieda, a medical auxiliary from Munich. They stopped the Luftwaffe before it could do this to them. The implication hangs unspoken. We failed. And because we failed, this survived. The coach enters Manchester through streets busy with morning traffic. Trams, lorries, civilians in queues. Outside shops, women pushing prams. Everything normal, ordinary, alive. Captain Atkins stands at the front of the coach. Ladies, you'll have 4 hours in the city center. Corporal Williams and I will accompany you, but we're guides, not guards. Stay within the designated district. It's marked on these maps. Return to the coach by 14, though. Questions? A young prisoner, Kita, 19. Still terrified of everything, raises her hand. What if someone attacks us? We're German. They lost sons and husbands. Atkins's expression softens. Then you report it to me immediately. And I'll deal with it. But, Miss Clean, I don't think you'll be attacked. The people here know you're prisoners. Most are simply curious. The coach stops outside the Manchester Museum. The door opens. Elle stands, legs unsteady, and steps onto British pavement as something approaching a free woman. No chains, no shackles, no armed escort visible. Just 12 German women about to discover what liberty looks like in a city that should hate them. If this story isn't going where you expected, hit subscribe. History lives in contradictions. The museum entrance is all Victorian grandeur. Marble columns, brass fixtures, a vade ceiling that makes Elle feel impossibly small. A woman in tweed. The curator, Mrs. Elalainer Patton, 60-some and formidable, greets them in the foyer. Welcome, ladies. Captain Atkins tells me you're interested in our natural history collection. Lotto waits for hostility, for barely concealed contempt, for the kind of cold civility that's worse than open hatred. Instead, Mrs. Patton gestures toward the galleries with genuine warmth. We've recently acquired some excellent geological specimens. The Egyptian wing has just reopened after being stored for safety during the bombing raids. She says it matter-of-factly. Bombing raids? Not your bombing raids, not German attacks that destroyed our cities, just a statement of fact. Absent of blame. Lot follows the group into the first gallery. Fossils, minerals, reconstructed skeletons of creatures dead for millions of years. Safe. Subjects, apolitical. A young boy, 8, maybe 9, tugs on his mother's coat and points at the German women. Mom, why are they wearing those uniforms? The mother kneels beside him. They're German prisoners, love. They're visiting our museum today. Why aren't they chained up? Because they're not dangerous, sweetheart. They're just women who were soldiers, like Aunt Margaret was a soldier. The war is ending. We treat people properly here. Lo pretends not to hear, but the words settle somewhere deep in a place she thought had calcified beyond feeling. At noon, Captain Atkins leads them to a tea room on King Street. White tablecloths, china cups, the kind of civilian normally. That seems like theater. Order what you like, Atkins says within reason. The 10 shillings should cover tea and a light meal. Lotta sits with Greta and Frida, studying the menu as if it's written in code. Sandwiches, scones, cakes, actual cakes, in 1945, in a country supposedly starving under rationing. The waitress, Miss Cooper, name badge pinned to her apron, approaches with a notepad and a smile. That seems unforced. What can I get you ladies? Tea, please. Lau manages. And sandwiches. Lovely. We've got cheese and pickle or spam and tomato. Spam's not glamorous, but it's fresh today. Cheese, please. Miss Cooper writes it down. You're from the camp in Cheshire, then? L tenses. Yes, miss. My sister's a guard there. Says you lot are quiet as church mice. Never cause trouble. She leans in. Conspirator ally, not like the Italian men at Camp 52. She says they'd flirt with a lamppost if it stood still long. Enough. Despite herself, Elle almost smiles. The casual humanity of the comment, the normally of it is more disorienting than hostility would be. The tea arrives. It's hot, strong, slightly bitter. Real tea, not ersatz. Greta takes a sip and closes her eyes. I'd forgotten what this tastes like. Across the room, an elderly woman approaches their table. She's small, dressed in black, and Elle braces for confrontation. Excuse me, the woman says in accented but clear German. I'm Mrs. Clean. I was born in Hamburg. I came to England in 1938. Laura stares. You're German? I was. I'm British now, but I wanted to say. She pauses, choosing words carefully. I'm glad you're being treated properly. I know what you were told about this country. I hope you see now that it wasn't true. She nods politely and returns to her table before Elle can respond. Frida whispers. Did that just happen? I think so, Lau replies, staring at her tea. After lunch, they walk 12 German women, escorted by 2 British officers through Manchester's shopping district. No chains, no visible weapons, just women moving through a city. Laura stops outside a bookshop. The window display includes English novels, technical manuals, and impossibly a German language edition of Goethe's Faust. She points. May I go inside? Atkins nods. Of course, just don't wander off. The shop is small, cramped, smelling of paper and dust in peace. The proprietor, Mr. Davies, elderly and bespectacled, glances up from his counter. Help you, miss. The GA in the window. May I see it? He retrieves it, hands it to her carefully. Swiss printing came through Red Cross channels. Beautiful edition. 2 shillings if you want it. Elle opens the book. The German text stares back at her. Familiar, comforting, a piece of home in a country that should feel like enemy territory. I'll take it. She counts out coins from her cloth purse. British money given freely, allowing her to purchase German literature in an English bookshop while wearing a Luftwaffe uniform. The absurdity breaks something in her. She hands over the coins, takes the wrapped book, and walks outside before the tears can start. Atkins finds her on the pavement, shoulders shaking. Miss Schneider, you gave me money to buy German books. Lau says, voice cracking. You let me walk through your city without chains. You treat me like I'm human. You are human, but we bombed you. We killed your people. My signals helped coordinate attacks on British cities. And you give me tea and books. And she can't finish. Atkins lets the silence settle, then quietly. Do you know what vengeance looks like? Miss Schneider? It looks like becoming the thing you're fighting against. Britain didn't go to war to become monsters. We went to war to stop them. L. Wipes her eyes with the heel of her hand. I don't understand you people. Good. Atkins replies. Maybe that means you'll remember us accurately when you go home. They reconvene at the Manchester Art Gallery. Another Victorian edifice. This one housing centuries of British and European painting. Lau follows the group through galleries hung with Turner, Constable Rossetti. Greta stops before a pre-Raphaelite painting, Proserpine by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. The captured Queen of the Underworld, holding a pomegranate, staring out with resigned acceptance. That's how I feel, Greta murmurs. Captured, held, but not mistreated. Just held in a place that isn't home. Mrs. Petton, overhearing, approaches. Proserpine was allowed to return home for part of each year. Perhaps you'll find the same grace. It's the kindest thing anyone said to Elle in 3 years. Drop a comment if your family has a story about P.S. treated with unexpected dignity. These histories matter. The coach ride back to Camp 17 is quiet. 12 women process experiences that contradict every certainty they'd held about British character and their own fate. Lo clutches her copy of Faust, the bookshop stamp still visible on the wrapping. Proof. Evidence that this day actually happened. Did we really just spend 4 hours walking freely through Manchester? Kata asks. Voice small. Without chains, without guards holding rifles? We had escorts. Frida corrects gently. Who bought us tea? Greta adds, who let us browse bookshops? Who treated us like visitors instead of enemies? As they pass through the camp gates, Elle feels an unexpected pang. Not relief to return, but sadness that the freedom of the afternoon is ending. Captain Atkins stands as the coach stops. Thank you, ladies. Your conduct was exemplary. Applications for next month's visit will be posted on Friday. Elle will apply. So will every other woman on this coach. That night in the barracks, heated, clean, humane, Lot lies in her court and reads the opening of By Dim Light. Philosophy. Studiet Minheisen Moon. She's studied propaganda and hatred and the certainty of British cruelty with hot effort too, and found it all to be lies. Over the following weeks, the city visits continue. Liverpool, Chester, Birmingham. Each excursion follows the same pattern. Supervised freedom, cultural exposure, civilian contact. Each excursion cracks the propaganda shell a little more. Elle is working in the camp library, a privilege earned through good conduct. When the realization hits her fully, if they lied about British treatment of prisoners, about the chains that don't exist, the brutality that never came, what else was a lie? What about the camps in Poland? The rumors they'd all dismissed as allied propaganda? What about the war itself? The reasons they'd been given for fighting? The questions don't have easy answers. Maybe they never will, but asking them is the beginning of something. Years later, decades later. In a letter to Captain Atkins, who she corresponded with until Atkins's death. In 1987, Lau writes, "You didn't just free me from physical chains I never wore. You freed me from the mental chains of believing my enemies were monsters. That was the greater liberation. That was what allowed me to become someone new." Repatriation begins in late 1945. Trains to do, ships to Hamburg, return to a Germany that exists only as rubble and trauma. Some go eagerly, desperate for news of families. Some go reluctantly, knowing what awaits. A few apply to stay. The British government allows it conditionally. Former PWS can apply for work permits, residency, eventual citizenship if they meet requirements, and pass security vetting. L applies in January 1946. She's approved in March. By April, she's working as a translator for the Control Commission in Manchester, the city she first visited. Without chains. Now, the city where she lives is something approaching a free woman. She rents a small flat on King Street, 3 blocks from the tea room where Miss Cooper served her sandwiches. She buys furniture with earned wages. She registers with a GP. She joins a library. She becomes British in increments, one choice at a time. In 1948, she meets David Petman, nephew of the museum curator, recently demobbed from the RAF, working as an engineer. They marry in 1949. Mrs. Petton officiates informally at the small civil ceremony, beaming with the pride of a matchmaker. Elle never returns to Germany permanently, but every year on the anniversary of her first city visit, she walks down King Street to the bookshop where Mr. Davies sold her a copy of Faust. He remembers her always. The German girl who cried, he says every time, smiling. "You still have that book on my shelf at home. I'll never part with it." Good. Some books are meant to be kept. When historians write about the Second World War, they write about strategic bombing and naval campaigns and the immense machinery of industrial slaughter. They write about millions dead, cities erased, and empires toppled. They rarely write about the bookshop, but Lau kept the receipt, the one Mr. Davies wrote in careful script, 1 copy FA German, 2 shillings. April 18, 1945. It's framed now, hanging in a house in Manchester beside a photograph of 12 German women standing outside the Manchester Museum, unshackled, tentative, smiling. Her grandchildren ask about it. Sometimes she tells them, "It was the first thing I bought with money I didn't have to steal or beg for, the first choice I made as something other than a prisoner." The British didn't win the war with tea and museum visits. They won it with blood and determination and the sacrifice of millions who gave everything to stop fascism. But they won the peace, at least the small Manchester piece of it, with something subtler. They won it by deciding that dignity was not a reward for virtue, but a baseline standard for all human beings, even enemies. That treating German women as humans worthy of respect didn't mean forgetting what Germany had done. That the absence of chains was more powerful than their Presence. L expected shackles, expected brutality. Disguised as British civility, expected to be worked, degraded, and eventually discarded. Instead, she was handed 10 shillings and invited to buy books in the language of her enemies, to walk through museums, celebrating the civilization she had tried to destroy, to drink tea with civilians who had every reason to hate her. It was the most profound kindness imaginable, being treated as if she still had the capacity for redemption. True strength, it turns out, is restraint. Civilization is the choice to extend dignity when no one would blame you for cruelty. Led along a Manchester Street, standing outside a bookshop, holding Gerda in her unchained hands. The book was real. The money was real. The freedom, tentative. Supervised, but real, was real. She walked the city without chains, and the city, against all expectation, welcomed her.